Welcome back to Behind the Vocals. This week we have the absolute honor of being joined by Sean Z of Doth. It is an awesome episode where we talk about all things vocals and lyrics, as well as how Sean is a superhuman with the ability to juggle so many projects and do them at a high level. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed making it. So without further ado, let's get into it. We are joined by the one and only legendary Mr. Sean Z of Doth. Sir, how are you doing, man? How's it going?
All right. I'm hanging in there. Everything's good. Just been busy with music.
Yeah, that's literally the next thing I was about to say. You are an extremely busy man. I don't know how you have the time to do anything. You're in so many projects and doing so many things. How do you do it? Are you superhuman?
Yeah, I think there was such a lull between 18 and 21. I was just fiending for music, so I was just really trying to get my hands in everything and anything. I think at one point I was doing like 15 projects, something like that.
What?
But obviously Metal Blade made me narrow it down to 5, unfortunately. I don't know. Just I had a lot of time, no music to do, and just just anything anyone would give me, I'd just eat it up and spit it out, essentially.
That's 15. That's insane.
Yeah, it was all different types of genres too. So I was trying everything. Just let me dip my hand in the water.
That's
all the styles I've wanted to do.
What all styles were they? Is it just all over the place?
Everything from electronic to me actually trying to do like Depeche Mode on electronic with a buddy of mine, to doing that Necrotic Flesh project where it was just one track, one take, all freestyles. No
That's
lyrics
crazy.
were written. Just dumb shit like that. 90s, 80s, thrash, black metal, kind of Tool. Like, I pretty much hit
That's crazy.
all the genres.
Dude, that's insane. That blows my mind. That's a lot. Next thing, man, your beard is legendary, sir. It's very majestic.
Thanks, man.
I don't even understand how it's. I'm jealous.
Well, I guess I've been growing it for 13 or 14 years now. And I like to keep it up just because it's always in the way, but I think I've gotten used to this look of it being up, so I rarely have it down. It's rare you'll see me with it down.
How long
But
is
back
it?
in the day, I used to. Oh, it's below my belt for sure. But I mean, I
Wow.
cut it all the time. So I cut probably, I don't know, 6 inches off about every 6 or 7 months, just because it gets too much, and it's good to keep it healthy. And,
Yeah.
But tying it up is the only way to go.
I like it. I like the tie. It's awesome.
A lot of people seem to are drawn to it, I guess, is the best way to say it.
It's
A
different.
lot of
It's
people
like,
are like, well, what the heck is that? Like, oh shit, sorry, and then I'll pull it out. Like,
that's
gotta
wild.
keep it tied up. Yeah.
Well, all right, sir. How I like to start this, if you will, just kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and give a little backstory, all that good things. Good stuff.
I'm a vocalist. I've been doing it a long time. I guess shit, coming up on 20 years, 20 plus years actually. Professionally, I don't even remember when I started, but I actually used to be a guitar player and a drummer, and I figured I would be a guitar player in a band someday. I showed up to a band practice one day with a guitar and the whole setup. I'm like, actually, we don't need a guitar player. We need a vocalist. Can you sing? And like, not really. And I guess the rest is fucking history. Here I am.
That was one of the next questions is if you played anything before you got into vocals. So which one did you do first, guitar or drums?
I started piano. I was first,
okay.
Piano, and then obviously early on I did the middle school, kind of high school band
Yeah.
route. Did some percussion and trumpet. I did play the flute for a bit. Yeah, and then went right to drums, and then I think from drums it was guitar, and then vocals, and that was it. So I think I've kept up with guitar the most, obviously, and a little bit of piano, but yeah, vocals are, well, I don't, who knows, man. I look back and I'm very fortunate, that's for sure, because I look back on old pictures or videos or early band stuff. I'm like, man, I can't even imagine if it went a different way. I don't know how the hell I got here.
Do you think learning those instruments and all that early helped you with vocals?
Not necessarily. I'd say it helped me get into the music scene and learn theory behind music, which I think helps in general with any instrument. I mean, you don't really use a lot of theory, but I think, I mean, I guess you do, but not in the sense that those instruments would have helped. Maybe piano for pitch,
Yeah.
if I'm trying to do some singing stuff. And obviously guitar as well for that. But I think more song structure, and when you hear other musicians in the band talking about specific key changes or in what chord that we're going to play next or what tuning, it's kind of nice to, be on the same page as them.
Yeah. Drums probably help with like rhythm too, as far as like pattern and like stuff like that too.
Of course, yeah. I'm a big hip hop guy, so
Oh,
I
really?
always like a good drum sound, yeah.
We got a hip hop project in the works.
No, I actually did a hip hop thing too. Yes,
Was
I
that one of
did
the
as well.
15?
That was one of them. Yeah, yeah. I did a bunch of dumb stuff, man. I mean, I think a lot of it was just trying to find new things to add, and I think they've all kind of. This is the amalgamation of everything. These latest projects, a little bit of singing, a little bit of dancing. No, I'm just kidding. But essentially, a little bit of singing, a little bit of screaming, a little bit of hip hop style vocals. Like I've always done, but maybe just embellished upon that stuff. So. I think throughout my history of music, yeah, I've always been a hip hop guy.
Okay.
But
So
metal, of course, always metal. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But like underlying, hey, I like Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
Like,
it's good to be
whoever.
diverse and to be in all genres and like,
of course.
yeah. So you said 20 years of vocals? You've been doing them about 20 years?
At least 20 years.
And just going in them needing a vocalist, that's what inspired you to get into vocals?
I think what actually inspired me, and I had this conversation with the dude from Lamb Goat, but kind of what's funny is what inspired me would have been screaming, obviously, trying to emulate my favorite artists. But I think Limp Bizkit was a huge influence,
Okay.
and Slipknot, those two, like the vocal styles of both of them are kind of I adapted to kind of both of those, like kind of the spitting and the lyrical aspect. And then the screaming style, and then obviously I grew up, 90s. I was Morbid Angel and Cannibal Corpse and all that. That I don't think that came till later. Like I really wasn't able to do that in my younger years as well as I do now. It's like something I guess learned how to do through time.
Okay. And how did you learn how to do vocals? Did you just trial and error, just trying to emulate like Fred and
actually it was
Corey and
more
stuff?
Corey. It was more Corey. I think my first vocals was trying to emulate Chino.
Oh wow, from Deftones?
Yeah, Adrenaline,
Such a
7
great
words.
band.
I think that was my first, when that first dropped, that music video, there I was just trying to be like, suck. I mean, maybe, some Nirvana, some, I don't know, that screaming style didn't really exist. Pantera obviously was a huge influence on me, especially Great Southern Trendkill. That kind of, I mean, obviously Far Beyond Driven, but, something about Great Southern Trendkill. I remember skipping school to go get that album the day it came out in 8th grade, and I used to wake up to the Great Southern Trendkill. Like you had your CD player, and the alarm would go off, and it would just be great way to wake up. Let me tell you, great way to wake up. Yeah.
So what were some early mistakes you made when you were learning?
Oh man, I'd say pushing too hard, going beyond my limit, I don't know, just not warming up correctly. I think a lot of the stuff I did wrong, like early when I would try to sing, I would do more damage than when I would try to scream. But I think anything, you stress your voice too much, you're going to do some damage. I found that like any kind of smoke particulates that would go into my voice, that would also kind of hurt. Like I'd be able to do a whole tour, but any kind of smoke that would get in there would immediately irritate my voice. So I think that's something I had to learn firsthand, to just not have any smoke in my throat. That'd be good. No problems.
What singing was like? What issues did you have singing? Was again just pushing or trying to like hit notes, maybe like not comfortable in,
range,
or
exactly, not comfortable in. Just trying to sing without warming up. I mean, just even a little bit of improper singing throw your voice for a loop for weeks.
Yeah.
And I could scream and tear your voice up for night on end, and you'd be a little hoarse, maybe have a little bit of issues getting some of that grit in by like the first week, but after you finally hit your stride, you're good. But singing, man, just I don't know, it's just a different animal. But yeah, so I that was early on. Those were my
Which one did you learn first, screaming or singing?
Singing, obviously.
Singing.
I think I learned singing at a younger age, but screaming, that didn't come about until someone you know, it was like, hey, let's get into a band, and we tried to all, you know, scream like Kurt Cobain, you know. Like you, at that point, you were just yelling at the top of your
Yeah.
lungs because you really didn't understand what you were doing. But you know, I think the death metal thing, you would always emulate it, but you never were able to get that depth. You know, you always kind of sound like a person trying to do death metal vocals for the first time in their life ever. Just that's what we sounded like back then, you know. So I idolized Chris Barnes quite a bit, you know, back then. Just he was a huge influence on me as far as grasping that death metal style. You know,
Yeah.
I loved his bark, you know, with his clarity.
Okay. Was there ever a moment when you were learning that it was kind of like an aha? It just kind of clicked. You're like, okay, this is how I do this without, you know, going hoarse or losing my voice or, you know, hurting myself at all. Did it ever kind of click, or is there a moment that stands out?
Necessarily, I think that's something that just came with time. I think, you know, you wake up one morning and you can do it, and you realize, okay, well, I guess I've been doing it this whole time. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was an aha moment. I think it was just, you know, years and years and years of developing and practicing. I mean, shoot, I would say back in the day, we practiced down in Atlanta, which was, you know, 40 minutes away. Not in Doth, just an earlier local band I was in. And we would go down 5, 6 days a week and practice hours on end. You know, you know, we'd never miss. It was every day for years. You know, so I think there's something a lot to be said about putting in your 10,000 hours, you know,
Yeah.
and then one day it just clicks, you know.
Nice. So it's crazy how far vocal techniques and stuff have come from back then. Like there really was no resources back then. There wasn't a lot of, if you wanted to learn, like you said, death metal, it was trial and error for the most part. There wasn't anything you could go, and there wasn't really many, I don't know if there was really any vocal instructors or singing instructors that would really tackle that style.
No, not at all. They used to look at me like I was crazy when I'd go like, "Hey, I want to learn how to scream." They're like, "Well, then don't, because you're gonna hurt your voice." Like, okay, well, thanks, I appreciate it. I'll check someone else. I mean, Melissa Cross,
Yeah.
to be fair, was a huge inspiration on me in my kind of middle of the ground years before I kind of actually got signed. Once Doth had found out, because they had, you know, the Roadrunner ties, they basically sent me to Melissa Cross, so I got to go to her, and all those years I spent warming up and doing those DVDs, you know, it's weird to just like be there one day.
Oh, I'm sure.
And her telling me, actually, you're doing it right, or this one you're not doing right. Like, oh shit, my bad. I guess I just been doing that one wrong, and some of those actually made a huge difference on me. I don't do a lot of that as much. Maybe to some degree, I'll do a lot of like the Z warm ups. You know,
Yeah.
I guess she would call them like whatever those trochaic exercises, the ones where you kind of like buzz your vocal cords together just to kind of warm them up. But I found that me personally doing that stuff on the road, especially when you're 2, 3 weeks in, and you know it's been a show every night, sometimes the singing does a little more damage than you would expect. Like to do those warm ups, I feel like it stresses the voice, whereas almost very minimal warm up with vocal rest is probably best when you get to that point.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just push and pull, you know.
That's actually how I learned how to scream was, you know, doing it wrong and just trying to figure it out, kind of like you said, just trying to emulate different styles, different vocalists, trying to see what works. And then I found the DVD and I was like, oh, okay, this makes so much more sense. And once it all kind of clicked, I was like, oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
It's really cool. She definitely carved out her niche kind of early on with that and made herself a staple in the metal community, really learning and diving into it. And she's worked with, tons of
some of the
big
best,
bands.
dude. I mean, all the good artists these days. It's funny. Like one of my favorites, you know, Noah Sebastian. I'm like, damn, I can't even believe that dude has been to her.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it's crazy. I had Brian from Shadows Fall was on a couple weeks back, and he's actually on the DVD, and I was like, dude, this is pretty crazy. You know, talking to one of the men that I used to watch on the DVD, you know, giving testimony and warming up, and he's like, I still have he has his original iPod with her personalized warm up. It's like, hello, Brian, and start up. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah. I still go through it sometimes. I mean, it does feel good, like after you go through it, especially when you haven't, you know, done any screaming for a while.
Yeah.
You just have this, you know, this feeling in your voice of like, I feel like I could scream to the world. You know, I don't know. It just feels warm and prepared, you know?
Absolutely. All right. So you kind of talked about the routine. I'm definitely curious about your routine. You mentioned, you do more of it when you're, I guess if you'll say cold, or you haven't been doing vocals for a while. And then
Yeah.
if you've been on the tour or been on the road for weeks, you change it. So what are the variables? Like, how does it change before you perform, whether it be a one-off show, you're on tour, you're going to the studio, or you're under the weather? What changes it, and how do you change
So
your
many
warm-up?
variables.
Yeah.
Oh man. I guess first is cold. Obviously, cold warm ups. I usually will go through. Oh, sorry. I usually will go through the warm up, the actual Melissa Cross warm up, where
Like the whole thing?
I'll go through the whole thing. If it's
Okay.
been a while, and I mean, I'm talking months since I've screamed, and usually I don't go that long. The only time I'll ever go that long is if I come off a long tour and then I have an extended break. Like, that's fine. I've just screamed for, 2 months straight.
Yeah.
I can take a few months off. So that's usually one of the instances where I will go and readdress the DVD. Um, Other than that, I'd say home screaming or studio screaming here. Even when I go do stuff down there, I usually have the same routine. I did post about it, the metal injection thing that we did, where it was, I have the same Gatorade, something about that blue or any sort of ice flavor Gatorade is huge for me. I do love coffee. I always find that it does kind of constrict
Is it the
everything.
caffeine or something?
Yeah, the
I've heard a lot
caffeine gets
about
me going.
caffeine.
Yeah, it gets me going. It gets me in the right mindset. I don't do energy drinks. I gave those up years ago. I stopped drinking rock stars, like essentially when I became a rock star. It's like I used to drink those all the time. And back in the day, man, I'd drink 2 energy drinks every day, and then I'd go sugar free, and I was getting a lot of weird headaches, and I just actually gave them all up and went to straight coffee, where I no sugar. I'll do. Kind of like the Pedro Pascal. I'm like, he stole that from me because I've been doing that longer than him. Where I go in and I say, 4 Ristretto shots, and I just do them on ice, and I just drink them straight. No bullshit. So that's usually a good get me going. Have the soothing feeling of the ice cold Gatorade. I always like to have a water nearby. And yeah, I'll go through a lot of the Z warm up.
Mm-hmm.
Go up and down the scale. I'll make sure to really put that emphasis that that she teaches you in those DVDs, that you're really putting that emphasis on smacking the vocal cords together.
Yeah.
And that's really all I'll do. And I guess it depends what I'm doing. If it's a song, obviously I'll do the screaming on the way to the studio. I won't push very hard. I kind of just get the basics out of the way, just to make sure I have it, have a grasp on it. And then that's it. I hit the studio, and I typically don't, again, yell or put any smoke particles in my voice at any time during any of those moments. And then, yeah, studio wise, I guess it's just a lot of repetitive motion. So I always make sure to never push too hard unless I know I'm at the end of the studio. Like, hey, this is the one. Let's give it all you got because we're coming back tomorrow. Like, all right, then I'll maybe push a little harder. But I definitely don't give it my all. I give it about 75% the whole way in the studio, because you really can't go 100% all the time, every time, or else, especially when you're paying and you have a schedule and you can only really go about 75. And sometimes you can throw those hundreds, when you need the crescendo or the impactful moment. But I try to keep it, pretty dialed back for most part. I guess tour wise, that's a little bit different. I definitely watch what I eat. I think I don't warm up as much on tour, just because it's less convenient to do. Again, maybe I'll walk around, or maybe the band in front of me or in front of us or whatever, there's a sound check or some sort of PA music, house music. I'll walk around and just kind of buzz my head a bit and trying to get my vocal cords warmed up. If I'm really stressing, I'll just vocal rest. I won't even open my mouth. I'll try to keep it hydrated, and try to keep the talking to a minimum. But again, don't whisper, like they say, because I definitely have had that. No sleep. We played some show in Russia, and there was no sleep on the train. And when we all got to the venue, we basically slept on the floor in the venue. And I think maybe I got 20 minutes of sleep here and there, and then another 20 minutes, another 20 minutes. That show was one of the toughest because I was just so exhausted and my voice was just so tired. So in cases like that, yeah, I think vocal rest and caffeine are probably the best. And then what were the other ones you asked?
Under the weather, if you're under the weather, or
Oh,
if it's a
under the
one-off,
weather.
I'm assuming you probably, depending on how many you've done, you probably do more of a warm-up. If you haven't done vocals in a while, you would probably
True.
then.
Well, under the weather, yeah, I guess it depends how long it's been. I typically don't put meds in myself. If I have a fever or something, obviously I will do, Tylenol or,
Yeah.
whatever your if anti-fever medicine is of choice. But I always find a lot of that makes your voice kind of raspy and so it's really tough. Sometimes you just got to fight through it with hot tea, or I always like to do the hot orangeade, which is you boil water and you put in basically 50-60% orange juice into a cup of hot water, and then throw some honey in and mix that. It's works
Wow.
wonders for your nasal passages and just for soothing your throat, like that warm vitamin C acidic, basically just cuts through all the phlegm. And then performance wise, that's tough. That's really tough. A one off, sure, I'll just go all out, whatever. I'll be tomorrow, I can sleep it off. But on tour, that's a tough one. You really have to take it easy. I don't. When I'm at that point, I'm only giving about 40%. Like because if you overdo it, you get lightheaded and fucking pass out,
Yeah.
or whatever drugs you're on to try to combat the being under the weather. So at 40%, and if I need to 50, but you never really push it beyond that. People can tell. I mean, they can definitely tell, but I think they just yeah enjoy being at the show sometimes. They don't necessarily need 100%. Sometimes just hearing the songs is all
And
it takes.
being sick and stuff on tour is pretty much inevitable too. With, like you said, lack of sleep and just
Yeah.
traveling and everything that goes on. It's gonna happen.
It's the people not showering. It's especially
That
if you're on a tour bus, the,
yeah.
the ice cold air conditioning eventually creates like a humidity in your lungs, and then everyone gets sick, and then it just passes down the fucking bunks. And oh god, those days are the worst.
I've never heard of the orange, the hot orange juice.
That's
That's
something. Yeah,
awesome.
that's a drink my mom used to make me as a kid when I was sick. Yeah, I mean, there's different
I definitely want to try that.
variations
I'm
of
I'm
it.
intrigued by that.
It's really good to have freshly squeezed orange juice.
Yeah.
And I'll fill up a glass, like I said, I don't know, 50%, 60%, just orange juice, and then you pour the hot liquid in it. But I mean, leave enough space so that it's still a hot liquid and you didn't just make it like tepid because it was so much orange juice in
Yeah.
it that now it's kind of like, eh. You really want it to be hot. So whatever your ratio is, but definitely honey on top of that as well, and just give it a good stir. And it is, man,
You just do
even
hot
when you're
water
not sick,
usually?
yeah, just hot water into the orange juice,
Wow.
and then honey,
Yeah.
re-engages the sweet of the drink because you're kind of diluting orange juice. But if you
Mhm.
do freshly squeezed, it's pretty sugary to begin with. But you always have to add the honey, and even not sick, just vocal, recovery. It's really, really, really nice for that. It feels really good on the throat.
This is a good transition then. So what do you do for vocal care other than that drink? You mentioned tea a little bit. What all do you do? Do you do cool downs after your set? Do you drink anything in particular? Vocal rest I know is obviously
The worst.
the
The worst.
biggest thing to do is just not talk, not do anything, just rest your throat, rest your voice.
Basically. Yeah.
But do you
Just
do
kind of
anything
deal
else?
with it. It depends how bad it is. It depends what my situation is. One-off show, all that stuff. Obviously one-off, I'm just resting. I'm not really doing much. Maybe make a cup of tea or something. But as far as health, sometimes when I do start to feel my voice a little stressed, I will sometimes gargle hot salt water or medium, medium hot salt water. I don't really do much as far as I've tried what are those the pastilles. I can't think of the brand. It's a vocal thing, like Vocalese maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah.
tried those before. Those are okay. Those kind of help a bit, especially when you're really deep into a tour and you're just like, I don't know, you just don't have it. Sometimes those actually open up your passageways right before you get on stage, and it does help a lot. I typically don't drink water before I go on stage because the cold usually, I don't know, a lot of screaming and a lot of activating that stomach wind, that stomach air makes me want to throw that water back up. So I typically will just gargle water and spit it out for a good portion of the show until I, kind of get through halfway point. But as far as care, obviously I don't yell at people.
Yeah.
I'm very careful about how I talk. I don't whisper. Just in general, I try not to ever overuse my voice, especially I don't know, just having so many projects that will rely on my voice. It's at this point, it's like I need to fucking take an insurance policy on the damn thing. But I gotta just be careful for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Just I never want to add notes. I never want to sing in the car to some stupid song and blow my voice out. Just for shits. I just have been to a few concerts the last couple of days. I know my limits of how far I can scream. I don't want to scream at the top of my lungs and come back hoarse. I'm not the guy in the crowd like when they're like, "Put your horns up and scream." I'm like, they got it. They got it. I'll sit back and watch this one. But I only do all of that just because I do worry about my voice and overusing it and stressing it. And sometimes I find like a pleasure in not speaking. Just keeping my mouth shut. But I also try not to eat too many fried foods, too much acidic stuff, not a lot of heavy sauces, especially on the road. Cheeses I do like. I can't bread, especially on tour. Bread and cheese is like your savior. A lot of fruits are good, but not too much. And then I don't drink, so there's no alcohol ever. Because when I used to drink, I would find that I would always push so much harder on stage. Like I would just it just felt so good, and the end of the show would come, and I would just be fried. Like, what did I do? I completely blew my voice. Like, I should not have had those 6 beers before I went on stage.
Kind of lose a little bit of the technique. You get more in the moment and not as, I guess, aware of what you're doing.
Exactly.
In the moment. You mentioned whispering. So is it Melissa that brought up that whispering is actually harmful, just to use your full voice, that it can actually cause more damage by just whispering?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's where I saw it. I've also heard it in other studies too, that whispering, especially on like if you're having some vocal, I guess whatever the word is, stress.
Yeah.
Not whispering, is probably the best way to heal.
Well, you gotta definitely taking all the steps to protect your voice, because I mean that is your instrument. It's not like you can buy a new voice like you get a guitar or a restring or anything. You're kind of stuck with what you got.
Can't change my strings. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit. Let's talk lyrics. Where do you pull from for lyrics? Do you pull from personal experience? Do you go the conceptual route? Do you kind of blend them together? What's your go-to? What do you usually do?
I like the idea of blending together. I think that's a good way to put it. Conceptual, sure. Here's an album where we're going to kind of focus on this specific type of theme.
Yeah.
But then lyrically and individually, let's break it down. And personal experiences, maybe an overall experience, like that the band may have been going through, or experiences that others have conveyed to me. Like there's a couple on the Deceivers where someone was telling me a story that I'm like, I've got to put those parts into songs because it's so cool, and it just fit the theme perfectly. So I think a little bit of everything is a good way to put it. And all the bands, I guess it depends on which band. That also changes the theme of the material. What am I writing about? Like what is Doth writing about versus what is Insanum writing about? But I think in Insanum, everyone kind of has a hand in the lyrics, which is kind of nice. So I don't ever rewrite the same thing that I may have written in Doth or another band that I'm in.
Do any of the other band members help you in the other bands? Do they contribute lyrics like, hey, I have this line, or I have this this verse or this part?
Not necessarily. For Doth, Andrew Wade and I he helped me write a significant portion where we would look at what I wrote for Doth, and we would be like, hey, how can we make this sound better? How can we get to the point, better. So it's just like pulling up a thesaurus, like, okay, what is a better word? Because this is too metal, and but I don't want to be too esoteric. So it's funny how this, again, that push and pull of what's good and what's not good. So it's cool to kind of have someone there to feed ideas off of, and that's what a producer, is there to do at times. So, and sometimes he would have a vocal pattern idea that I didn't have originally, and he'd be like, hey, we need to fit something into this. And so then we'd bash our heads around what vocal pattern will fit in this cadence, but it will also make sense lyrically before and after it. Like, so it's definitely a formula, I think. But then as far as other bands, yeah, like Sinsanum, for instance, I think everybody in that band is fully capable of writing lyrics. I mean, you got Fred, you got Attila, the Mayhem dude, you got Flo or Hymeth, and he's in Seth, and they have some, deep, dark black metal lyrics. You got Steph, he's a vocalist in Loud Blast. So it's interesting that everybody can kind of contribute. So yeah, in that band, I think we all kind of feed off of each other. But in the other bands, yeah, I think you do get a lot of, hey, this line would be cool. Like, yeah, let's add it. That's great. I think so too. Let's build off of it.
Nice.
I'm always into new ideas.
Oh, yeah. How are it's impressive. How are you writing lyrics for this many bands? And keeping, like you said, fresh concepts that don't. I know it's different. They're different styles. Obviously, each band's its own entity.
Yeah.
But how are you pulling this many ideas and this many experiences? And it's got to be a lot. I mean, your brain's got to be working overtime.
I think you do it enough that you kind of figure out what you want to say. Or I see something, it sparks an idea. A lot of that, the Vented band that I did. I mean. Mm-hmm. I think we did 15 tracks, and then we have another like 18 ready to go.
Wow.
And I think a lot of those those were more personal to me, personal things I had witnessed on TV, or I watched that Squid Game show, or I watched this movie, or, it's cool to kind of just pull from that and write lyrics about that. And then Doth is not about anything like that. Doth is more about the band and the experience of the band and, just being really dark and deep and emotional. And then Sinsanum is more on the evil, darker side of things. And, I think, obviously, I don't want to say you can never run out of ideas. Of course you can, but having everybody contribute and overhear and be a critique or critic, I think is probably the best way to go, because they'll hear something like, hey, I don't like this, or I don't like this pattern, or you've done this before, so you kind of have help. It's not easy to do just on my own, I have to say. Because if it was up to me, I'd probably sound a lot the same, 18 projects later. But I think having everybody kind of nipping at my toes keeps me somewhat fresh. And then again, they all contribute ideas too. So I'm not 100% the writer, I think, in any project lyrically. Maybe Vented, maybe Velociter. But I think mostly it's, I do have some hands or some words, or, they write an entire part. Like, yeah. Cool. I mean, it's better than what I wrote, but then, hey, I've got a cool idea that comes after that, And I think that's what makes the lyrics stand out, as they never sound the same.
Yeah.
All the way through all the albums.
All right. So do you have a lyricist that you look up to or that inspired you? Is there someone that stands out that you really admire their work or what they do?
That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one.
We're getting to the hard questions now. It's going to be the tricky ones.
I mean, obviously, I grew up, loving lyrics, and I think that's my curse or my ADD, or whatever you want to call it, on the spectrum, is I just remember a lot of lyrics. So lyrics to me have always been a thing. I like all lyrics as long as they sound cool, as long as there's a meaning behind them. Sometimes they don't even have to have a meaning. I don't know if I have a favorite. All throughout history, there's just been so many that are deep, and some are just completely out there. Like, you take Nirvana, for instance. Those, like, as you look on them as I've gotten older, I'm like, these are kind of cool. When I was younger, I didn't understand them. They were just, grungy and you know, kind of out there. But now you look, you're like, oh man, he was actually kind of just writing poetry. And then you have a lot of just like literal shit, you know, like a hate breed, like I'm gonna beat you down in the ground. You're like, yeah, you know. So there's just so much far and in between. I think, man, it's tough to pick a favorite. I love I Prevail a lot. I do like Bad Omens. Just picking new bands, Sleep Token, all those new bands everyone likes. I like those, you know, lyrics. I like the way it flows. I like the things they say.
Yeah.
I like the passion behind them. You know, I mean, the Beatles are great writers, you know, at some point, you know, especially in their Let It Be, Sergeant Pepper era. You know, Pink Floyd, you know. I think just
I love the
really hit
diversity
the
we have here. We're going everywhere from Nirvana to I Prevail to Beatles and Pink Floyd. It's awesome. I love this.
you know, I don't really pull my lyrics from, you know, Cannibal Corpse, unfortunately. You know, I don't think a lot of those really speak to who I am personally. But you know, I don't know. I even Chimera, you know, I used to love Chimera growing up. So getting to even be a part of that band and the lyrics in that band have always kind of struck a nerve. I think they have with a lot of people, you know.
Yeah.
That's more of the I hate everyone kind of mentality, you know. But yeah, I don't really have a favorite, so to speak. It's more
Okay.
just I like lyrics from everybody. You know, I think I pull from every genre.
Okay. All right. So this next one is tough. I will warn you.
Yeah.
This one always seems to get people because, like you said, you have so many in your head. Do you have a
Yeah.
favorite lyric? Now this has we've kind of made it like a two part. You can either it can be from someone else or it can be your own, or you can throw both at me if you want. If you have favorites you've done,
Yeah.
favorites someone else has done.
Problem is the way my brain works with lyrics is I have to hear the beginning of the song and then I can remember every fucking lyric from that song. But if I can't just pull lyrics out of my head. Let me think. What's a recent lyric that has really been has really hit home to me? I don't know.
It's the tricky one. This one always gets everybody because it's a lot. It's
I mean,
a lot
there's
to
so
on the
many.
spot to pull one lyric out of all the songs of discography in your head.
You know, I do know one. It's one lyric, it's a whole line. It's the Pink Floyd line, home, home again, you know. It's that kind of whole ending of the song when 10 years have gone behind you, you know, that lyric right there, I think, you know, because you've been out on the road, you don't realize that you look back and literally 10 years of your life is gone. I find that lyric repeats in my head a lot. Um, so I would say that one lyric.
Okay. Do you have any of your own lyrics that stand out?
You know, that's a tough one. One that I always kind of clung to is one that I've seen a few people tattoo on their legs, and that's the uh, "We can never give up our lives, thinking we will live forever. We can only die alone." You know, one by one we turn to ash. You know, we can only die alone, which is really true. You know, you're surrounded by everything and everyone, but in reality, you die lonely and alone.
Yeah.
Even if you're surrounded by people at the moment you die. That one always kind of stuck with me too. I've had a lot of really stupid ass lyrics, but I've had some kind of cool ones that I wish I could remember and recall at this current moment in time. But some of the new shit, man, I don't know. Tough. Deserving of the Grave has some really good lyrics, I think, but I can't pull any
Gotcha.
specifically.
How is
Yeah.
it? How does it feel having people tattoo your lyrics on their body? Like just having tattoos of it? Does it? Especially the first time you saw it, is it a little surreal? Like, wow, that's something that come out of my brain. I've wrote, and now here you are wearing it.
Of course, yeah, it's very cool. It's an honor to see any kind of artwork of anything that I've been a part of that someone put on their body. Logos, lyrics, you know, whatever it may be. You know, because that's forever, man.
Yeah.
You obviously felt passionate enough about it, so it's always a cool thing, and I respect it.
Absolutely. All right. So, do you have any tips for new songwriters as far as lyrically patterns, like rhythmic patterns, all that stuff, cadence, flow, all of that?
Ooh, that's a tough one. You know, I always said one thing that it takes to be a really good vocalist is you have to be good at doing imitations, like just actual imitations of people. If you can imitate people, you can pretty much do any vocal style. It's like you hear it enough and then you know how to make that voice.
Yeah.
It's the same thing applied to screaming, I always felt. Um, Man, writing songs, that's a tough, that's a rabbit hole. I mean, I think that may be the hardest question you ask because it's so subjective. What you listen to, what influences you, what the song calls for. I can't just pinpoint it to a formula. I mean, what style of music is it?
Yeah.
you know. I mean, I guess pointers are you are definitely your own worst critic. Sometimes the first thing you wrote is usually some of the coolest stuff you write. So never ditch that. Always come back to it because I sometimes find the first stuff is the stuff I'm like, man, why didn't we just come back to this? And I don't listen to something until, you know, 2 months have gone by. Like, why don't I listen to the early stuff I did? And literally the first take I did was what we end up going with. So yeah, never be too hard on yourself, but always take advice from others, and never think that your idea is better than anybody else's because someone could have a better idea, but also stand your ground if it's something you truly believe in. But don't be that, person, I think, where it's like, I'm not changing anything. I did this and I wrote this and no one can tell me otherwise. I think that's probably the best tip to give because that sours relationships so fast and it makes writing so difficult.
Yeah.
I think the best thing to say is just, hey, I really like the way this sounds. Maybe we can come to a middle point, even if it hurts to say it, but, and then as far as creativity wise, I don't know, just do whatever inspires you, get in your zone, light the candles if you have to, set the mood. I've always been a firm believer of, the mood being right before you get the scream on. So,
okay. Nice. So I have to ask now, you've opened this can of worms. What's your best, impersonation that you can do there? What you opened it up. I need to know now. What do you have? Like, what's the go-to?
I don't even know. There's so many. I don't know, dude. That's a tough one. I don't know. Be a good one.
Do you just do these like on the bus? You'll just like bust them out just randomly?
I think, obviously I love doing Australian accents a lot. I think that's a big thing is when you get out there, not to be offensive, but I always like to just do the accent just to hear how it's not doing it. So I find whenever I'm in a new country, I always try to sound like the accent. So usually I have to hear it to do it. But Australia seems to always be a go-to for me. And then obviously I like to do, characters, but I don't know that if I
we put you on the spot.
I know you put me on the spot. That's no worries there, mate. Your bags will be there in a bit and air.
Not bad at all.
Just doing stupid impersonations. Yeah, I think that really helps you be a better vocalist because it helps you break out of your comfort zone, make sounds you wouldn't normally make. Especially around other people, it gets you more comfortable, like being able to scream without the music blasting in your headphones in front of other people. Doing impersonations will actually help break down that third wall, I found.
Okay, nice. All right, so do you have a favorite song to do vocally? And there's, again, another part to this. We know when you write something in the studio, sometimes it sounds great. You're like, this is awesome. And then you go to do it live, and you're like, I didn't think this through. This is kind of rough. Do you have a part equally that you're like, no, you don't necessarily hate because obviously it's your own material. You're not going to hate it, but you kind of dread it, or whenever it comes to it on playing live, you're like, let me get through this part. It's a little rough.
Not me per se. I mean, most of the stuff I do, I can do live. Even if I can't initially do it, it just takes a couple practices to do it. Like, I found that was the case, for instance, like Sinsanum. I had never performed that material live. When it came time to do it, I think after about 4 or 5 shows, it was like, okay, I understand how to do this. So I don't know if that counts, because I never really had the opportunity to do it live.
Yeah.
So, that knowing what to do, where to do it, when to breathe, that type of thing. Doth, though, not one of the songs I wrote, but From the Blind, since I didn't write that song, when I would perform that lyrically when I first joined the band, it was so tough to do because if you listen to that song from the beginning to the song till almost, 3/4 of the way through, there's not a single breath to be taken. It's just vocals the whole song. And then the next part comes and it's right back to the next part and then it's blah 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 and then right back to the next part like ugh. So that song in particular is quite tough. I was doing one of the vocal playthroughs for Doth last night, and I did Into Forgotten Dirt, and it got to a certain point in the ending of the chorus, coming into the bridge before the next verse. I was a little tough. That was a little tough. I did it. It took about 10 or 15 tries to get it right because I had never actually tried to do that in one take because I did it, obviously cut and paste.
Right.
So that one specifically one got me, but I did it. It just, again, I think it's one of those things, this Insanum thing, where you just have never actually done it. You just need to kind of figure it out, and then once you get it and you know where the breaths are, yeah. And then favorite song of mine, or just
a
any
favorite song or part of your songs that you enjoy doing live?
I don't know, man. That's I mean, anything with obviously anything with a breakdown.
Yeah.
Of course. I really enjoyed doing. There were two Sin songs that we did. I believe one is. What is the damn name of that song? Well, I Stand Alone is a fun one to play live. That one has some really cool breakdowns. And Condemned to Suffer.
Okay.
That's an Insanum song. There's a breakdown in it. That song. That one's a good one.
Okay.
Oh, that's actually in no. That's in man, they're gonna kill me that I don't know the name of this song. There's too many songs, okay? Now, to be fair. And you know why they're gonna be mad? Because Splendor and Agony. It's one of the singles. Splendor and Agony, the breakdown of that. That's actually one of my favorites to do live, I have to say. So far.
Okay.
That's been one of my favorites.
How is it doing vocals in so many different projects? Is it tiring? Is it refreshing just because it's different styles? I mean, you're kind of, all the 5 projects are different for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. They are. I've always loved to scream, so it's funny. Joey had told me something a while back about Corey. He's like, man, Corey does not like to scream as much as he likes to sing anymore. And I'm like, I feel that, like you start to get to that point, but I found love again with screaming, and it's really refreshing to kind of have different styles for each one.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of cool with Doth that I've incorporated again all of those little nuances and tidbits I picked up over the last 15 years since I was last with them. So I think it made for a better Doth record as well.
Which band would you say is hardest to write vocals for? Like as far as patterns or anything like that, or which band and style, I guess?
I would have to say Doth, just because the expectation level is very high.
Yeah.
Especially when you have the musicians writing that type of material. It's like, where do you vocally go with this and make it? It's not your traditional death metal. It's more orchestral, and where do vocals even fit here? But again, that's kind of where a producer comes in, because some parts that I had written, we changed the vocal pattern when we got to the studio, or he said, hey, why don't you try singing on this part instead of this part, and completely flipped it. And wow, I can't believe I didn't even see it that way.
Yeah.
And now it sounds so much better. I couldn't even imagine it, listening to it the other way now. So I'd say probably Doth is a little bit more challenging to write for vocally.
Okay. Do you ever get demo-itis with all these projects? Where you write something?
Come on, everybody does. Yeah, I think
have to ask.
I think that's part of being a musician is demo-itis. I think that's, you just, you crave that sound. I mean, I think that happened to me with the last Sin record, where the demo sounded so much different than the mastered version, just because of the way the vocals were mixed. Some of it kind of bummed me out. I'm like, man, it's just. But the demo sounded so good to me. I think Doth self-titled was the same way. The self-titled of the actual demo was so much different than what we released. I mean, it was night and day. I still have some of those demos, and I listen to them, and it's, man, it's a different record. It really is. Like parts that, were added later in mastering or added later in post-production, where, they made a guitar part FM, had it tweak and then fade in or something. When that was just like straight on riff, or something like it. Yeah, so I definitely, I don't know. Sometimes I think the demo could potentially be better, though. I'm not gonna lie.
It gets burned into your brain, and you're just, that's what you think of the song. And yeah. So this, I don't want to get you in trouble with this. So if you don't want to answer it, it is okay. But what the laugh already. Do you have a favorite album that you've done, or something you're most proud of out of all your body of work? Is there one that stands out? You're like, this album, I'm super. I know you're proud of all of them. Like, I'm not trying to discredit anything, but is there one that you're just like, man, this one really kicked ass? I'm super proud of everything from start to finish on this one.
I am proud of everything, but I have this difficulty where I think I get to a certain point, and then I'm like, I feel like the vocals could have sounded better. I didn't do a good enough job. Like, I start to become my own worst critic.
Isn't that a vocal curse though? Because you're always, everyone will be like, oh, this sounds good, and you're like, it could be better.
Yeah, I could have done so much better, honestly. And then I hear certain things where I miss, and I'm like, I can't believe I didn't say anything then, or I was too burned out at the time because I had just done 5 days straight of 10 hours a day. I don't know. I really liked the new Doth record. I think that record stands on its own. I think that is obviously one of my favorite things that has released to date, but the new Sinsanum record is fucking amazing. So it's really tough to tell. Those two are going to be up there for me.
Okay.
It's going to be neck and neck, because that I actually do a lot of, well, not a lot, but there's a song where I sing quite a bit on. And there's a few I actually do some actual singing. And I think it really, it's weird. I think that's its own Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon in its own respect. But I feel like the Doth record is more like The Wall.
Yeah.
Maybe kind of Dark Side. But something about this new Sinsanum record, it hits a note, because there's some really kind of emotional stuff on there. Nothing like, piano and it's soft. Like, it's all death metal and black metal. But just very tastefully and classy done. So it's funny that you probably won't hear that for another year, but
is it in the mixing mastering stage, I'm guessing? Or?
It's all done. No,
it's done.
Yeah, we finished it. I actually finished it before I even started recording vocals for the Doth record.
Wow.
I finished it beginning of last year. And then, the whole Metal Blade thing happened. We just were like, well, we kind of have to play our cards right and position things properly, so not one band takes away from the other. So Doth is kind of the center focus at the moment, and I think sometime in the middle of next year, I believe this Sinsanum record will come out. I don't know, maybe early, maybe late, maybe middle, but it also sounds pretty.
I can't wait to hear it. I'm excited.
It's really good. And Doth, shoot, man, I think we started writing these songs in 21 as well, or at least I think that's when we started kind of piecing it together. So both of these records took quite a while. It's funny that they're finally seeing the light of day.
How much of the stuff do you guys do DIY for any of the bands? Is there a lot of that where you record vocals at home, or you go to a guitar player or a drummer or whoever and do at least pre-production? I'm assuming you do quite a bit of that, right?
So Doth was completely done demoing back and forth. I went to Andrew Wade, and then we went to Jens Bogren in Sweden and mixed and mastered it.
Oh, nice.
We did the 3 songs, we shopped them, got the deal, and then we went right back and did it all over again. I went right back to Andrew Wade, did 6 more songs, went back to Sweden. Sinsanum, we didn't have as big of a budget, but we did get the approval to do another record, so I did all of the vocals sitting right here. actually sitting. I didn't stand for any of the vocals, and I used this exact microphone just here at home.
How do you do vocals
Uh,
sitting? That I don't know what it is. Something about sitting just throws me off. I don't know if it's like my
You
technique
gotta
just
sit.
doesn't
We
lend
gotta
it.
sit up straight.
Yeah,
Obviously,
well,
you
yeah.
can't slouch. But there was no way I could actually do it standing because there was so much editing and in between.
Yeah.
So I would just sit there, cut and paste, and then pop my hands up and then sit forward and then hit it and then sit back down and then that's just how it had to be done. And they actually sound fucking amazing. Maybe the best vocals I've ever done.
Okay.
So I don't know, sitting, it's funny, sitting.
Okay. So how is working with Metal Blade? Metal Blade, legendary label.
Yeah,
Just
they're amazing.
amazing.
They've
I've
been-
heard nothing but good things about Metal Blade over the years. It's always
They
been
just get it.
yeah.
They just get it, man. They get being in a metal band, I think is the best thing to say about it. Not that other labels don't.
Yeah.
It's just of the labels that we were shopping to and that had interest, they were the label that seemed to understand our future and what we were looking to achieve. And, it's everything down from, our A&R to, the press people, the photos. I mean, even, Tracy and Brian. I mean, they've just been so like, we love you guys, thanks for being. It's just a lot of care, versus like, you're just some other band, that we put on this label.
That goes a long way too, to know people actually
It does.
give a shit and care for you and like enjoy what you're doing and are fans. I mean,
Yeah. They've been very cool and very receptive to everything, and they've kind of given us a little more free reign than I think usual. But also, we are kind of veterans. It's weird to say that, but not big by any means, but veterans. No huge status by any means, but vets. I think vets means you've been doing it more than 10 years. And so I think they also kind of saw that and saw, we have a lot of a back catalog to kind of offer too. So that's why we did the re-release of the Hinders, and hopefully we can do the Concealers too. That'd be awesome. I'd love to see that released on vinyl.
that'd be super awesome.
Yeah,
All right.
I agree.
We're gonna get to some weird questions now. It's time to get it weird in here.
All right.
All right. Do you have a favorite call out? And I kind of a backstory of this. I tell everybody because it is a weird question. Everybody's always like a favorite call out, but there are bands specifically. I always reference Body Snatcher. The vocalist loves to say just off the wall call outs. It'll be a big breakdown coming, and he will just say the most random stuff, kind of like an Adam D from Killswitch. Just stuff that you don't expect in heavy times in the songs or parts. So you're like, what the hell did he just say? What's happening?
Yeah.
Or do you keep it kind of straightforward? Do you say anything random? Do you throw in like an accent if you're overseas? Do you try to mess with the crowd and get like a laugh or?
No, I typically don't. It's sadly the bands. Well, not sadly, but obviously the bands that I'm in, they seem to, we seem to take a more professional approach to
Go a little more
playing
serious.
live.
Stay.
Yeah, exactly. There's not really it's like you play and there's transitions between every song. Like you're supposed to look stoic and badass. I mean, obviously have a good time, but like Chimera, I think we were more silly. I think that Mark would always call out some band member on stage or just say something stupid, or the infamous cowboy meme. Or the cowboy sound whenever it would hit the breakdown. I think my favorite one that we did was the Rick Ross, like the like in the middle of a breakdown. So I never personally do anything like that. Unfortunately, I'm not as fun.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's you get a mixed bag asking that question. That's why I ask it. Some are like, yeah, sometimes I'll throw something random, or then never anything scripted because you want it to be organic. You want it to to flow, but it's interesting to see what everybody does. Speaking of Chimera, do you have any fun Chimera stories? How was that period?
It's amazing. I love those guys, man. That period was life changing. I mean, shit, I grew up loving that band.
They just played a show recently, right? They were
Incarceration.
Which one was it?
Incarceration.
Yeah. A big
I'm
festival.
still pretty heavily in touch with those guys, man. They're
That's
all
awesome.
pretty badass. I got to go up and do a song at their Impossibility of Reason 20-year tour or whatever, or 20-year show. He's like, if you can get up here, he can get you come on stage, do a song. So I did Pure Hatred with Mark. That was
that's awesome.
was awesome. Oh man, like I said, I grew up loving that band. So some random guy from Alpharetta, I get to be a dude in that band. I even got to. I think I opened my mouth on every track of Crown of Phantoms. I screamed on every track at least once.
That's awesome.
You know, so that's come on, that's
really cool.
who the hell get? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
like as a keyboard player, I guess the fucking. So you know, sometimes you just have to count your blessings, and I think that was one of them because back then I was more, you know, petty and sour because I was so used to being a vocalist, and it was weird being in the back, and but you know, you look back on it, it's like, man, I'm just so thankful to ever have been given that opportunity, and Mark and I always have been the best of friends, and man, I could tell you stories for days of just stupid stuff, and you know, I don't know, obviously, you know, I'll never forget the time when, man, we landed in Argentina, and they're like, we're like, where's our gear? They're like, well, your gear's not here. It's still in Miami. Like, wait, what? Like, yeah, it never left Miami, so it'll be here in the morning. Like, okay, cool. So we come back in the morning. Meanwhile, we have to play a show that night, and the gear's there. And they said, well, you have to give us $10,000 if you want your gear back. Like, well, we're not giving you 10 grand. Well, it should have just been free. And they're like, well, unfortunately, since you didn't enter with it, you know, you like technically it's not yours. So if you entered with, you could play with it. But since you're not, we have to like you have to rent it from us essentially. And so we're like, well, forget it. We're leaving for Chile tomorrow. Can we take it with us? And they're like, yeah, you just can't bring it with you. If you do, you have to pay for it. So we basically played an entire show using all local band gear because we didn't want to pay them 10 grand to get our gear back.
That's insane.
And then we flew to Chile and we land and they're like, yeah, actually you can't play. We can't even go to the venue. Like, why? They're like, well, there's riots. There's like some students riots happening in Chile right in front of the venue. We can't go there. So we just go to the hotel. We all take naps. And, you know, I mean, we're supposed to play, I think, at 10 or 9:30. And it's now 8 o'clock. And we still haven't even put our gear on the stage yet. So, or let alone unloaded it from, you know, from the van. So I think we roll up around 9 o'clock. We unload everything. Everybody's helping us. I think we finally get everything loaded about 9:45. I think we end up playing at about 10:30, but from 9:45 to 10:30, we literally are playing to a packed crowd, setting up our own gear. Like, hey, like, hang on, let me just bring this keyboard stand, set this up right here. Like, hang on, let me just grab this, set this guitar, let me plug this up. Man, they just watched us set up for 30 minutes. And then we played. Like, we walked off stage to still give the allure of the band intro mentality, and then we just walked out and played the set, and it was awesome. But you know,
how did Chimera come about, going from vocals to doing keyboard vocals?
We had toured with them a bunch with Doth.
Yeah,
and we toured with them in Europe, and Emil filled in on guitar for Matt when he had his baby. And so when it came time for Jim to go on his honeymoon or something, they needed a fill-in, so Emil once again filled in. They just brought Doth out, so we did double duty. And then I think we did another tour with Chimera, and we just kept in touch, Mark and I. And, you know, like, I think during that tour, Doth was in the van, and I was sleeping in the bus with Chimera, just, like, best buds with Mark. We were just, like, hanging out and being idiots. And he randomly calls me. He's like, hey, I got a weird question. He's like, would you want to be the keyboard player / backing vocalist in Chimera? I'm like, hell yeah. And he goes, you know, I figure it's more of like a computer job than it is a screaming job, but you also scream. So, you know, we could do some dual vocal stuff, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so that just evolved into, you know, him and I having this ever growing vocal back and forth relationship on stage where I'd feed off him, he'd feed off me. You know, we became like this heavy ass fucking vocal duo. You know, because I knew what he was gonna do, and I'd go high and he'd go low, or vice versa. And it was fucking awesome, man.
That is awesome. That's really cool. That's an awesome thing to have on your resume, and you know, life experience, like you said, being in legendary Chimera. I mean, that's one of the top bands. Yep. Okay, time for weird question again. We kind of derailed. Now we're back to the weirdness. So this one is kind of like a sports inspired question, but a lot of times athletes will have superstitious things they'll do before they play a show, or whatever. They may wear a certain sock, or they may have to do this, or like you said with your blue Gatorade or the ice Gatorades, you do that, and they have to do that before each time. Do you have any pre-studio / show rituals, not necessarily vocal inspired, but something you have to do to be ready?
Not necessarily. I mean, maybe I used to, or I'd be like, I gotta chug a beer before I go. But like, since I haven't drank in like 7 or 8 years now, so maybe less. Maybe I'm a little over on that. But I don't really have many rituals these days. Again, I just don't. I don't really partake in any type of activities before I go on stage.
Yeah.
I usually like to play sober, and I think that's it, man. I don't really have any crazy, like, I don't have any like socks that I wear,
Yeah.
or, I do have the same stage shoes that I've had forever that I've worn in like all my music videos. Maybe
Yeah.
that's a thing.
That
Yeah, I
totally
do.
counts.
Yeah, I do have some stage shoes that I always bring on tour with me. They're like my good luck shoes. so to
That's
speak.
exactly that's what I meant
Yeah.
right there. That's perfect.
Yeah.
It's funny asking that. You'll get everything from I always do push-ups before the studio, or I stretch, I hardcore stretch, or I'll do this, and it's some of them are as easy as I just give a fist bump, to my one guitar player or something. We always fist bump before we play, and just
Yeah.
it's funny to hear what everyone does. Nice. So, where is your favorite place to play? Favorite country? We'll do country. Do you have a favorite place to travel to?
Well, I mean, Japan, dude. Japan is where it's
I feel
at.
like that's the consensus. Those that have been to Japan, everyone
Hey.
says Japan.
But wait, though, for real, like when we just played in Hong Kong, it was absolutely amazing. To
Really?
kind of one up Japan, just since I think there had been some government affiliated, they had shut down the venue. Not a lot of people play in Hong Kong. Not a lot of people ever get to go to Hong Kong. And the show was absolutely packed. It was such a crazy place that I think we played 18 songs or something.
Oh,
We
wow.
finished and they just kept chanting for more. And we don't have any more. We didn't learn anymore. We only know 18. We we're like, well, do you want us to play one we've already played? And they're like, yeah. And until a few nights ago, I had not seen many bands play the same song twice in one set. So yeah, that was my claim to fame until I just watched Limp Bizkit do it on Sunday night, which was interesting. There was a dude playing. He was holding a sign, this little kid, and it said, "Can I please sing?" Not to get off topic.
No, you're
but
fine.
Can I sing Break Stuff with you on stage? And dude, they opened with Break Stuff, right? And so they played Take a Look Around. They finished, and I think they're supposed to play some other song because I was looking at the set list. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, they basically ended on Break Stuff, and they had that kid come up and sing it with them. I'm like,
Oh,
what
that's
the
awesome.
fuck? How do you start and end with the same song? But no, it happened to Sinsaenum in Hong Kong. Philippines was really cool. I think most of the Asian countries are obviously some of my favorite places to play.
Everyone says
Um,
Japan, just they pay so
just-
much attention. They're so into the song, and then they clap afterwards,
Yeah.
and they're just watching. They're like
Yeah.
super focused on you in between songs, and the respect and everything they pay is just insane.
Now, on the opposite side of that coin, I really do love playing a lot of European countries because they tend to get more rowdy and brutal. And, I mean, Germany, yes, but also Germany, no. Like, I've seen the German shows where they don't want to be bothered, but then I've seen the German shows where they just go fucking crazy. And then I've seen, like Poland is a great place to play. Russia, man, those people just
Russia's
killing
wild.
each other. Killing each other. And it was crazy. I was playing with my beard down at the time. So many people trying to grab my fucking beard from the stage. Like, so many people. I'm like a Rasputin over there. Those people, like, please don't touch it. No. All right, please don't touch it. Just please don't touch it.
What's the craziest place you've played? Would it be Russia? Would you say, or maybe the craziest crowd?
I mean, Mexico goes fucking wild. Mexico goes wild. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
Russia's probably up there, but I would probably say somewhere in Mexico. They just, when they're, like, I don't know. I can't even explain it, but yeah, I'd probably say Mexico to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah, they get rowdy, man. They get rowdy.
Nice. All right. So do you have any we kind of asked about Chimera, but do you have any fun tour stories for us that you can say? I mean, I'm sure there's some that you probably shouldn't say, but is there any off the top of your head? Any fun
Probably my
instances?
favorite. I always tell the story is the one Doth had done like a 10 run, 10 show run with Slayer, and we played
Oh, wow.
some place in, I think maybe it's Wiesbaden, but it was this old airplane hangar, and I'll never forget. I see Kerry King walking around with his laptop, just like looking, and he goes, "You guys know the Wi-Fi password?" I mean, I don't know, man. To me, it's just great. Like, Slayer net must be down, brother.
How was touring with Slayer?
That was awesome. And that specific show, people were fighting outside to get in because it had sold out. And I'll never forget, we got up on stage and Emil just strikes the first chord, and you just hear the whole place go ape shit. Just like, man, I wish we could have done more shows, but at least we got to play a few with Slayer. Just
Slayer fans they're
Yeah.
wild. Very
Yeah,
passionate.
they were definitely very cool. And then I'd say the other crazy story I have is it's a Chimera story when we played Soundwave, and I can't remember the show before it, but we were going into Perth. So maybe we were taking off out of Brisbane or Melbourne, and we were going to Perth. And a lot of the bands all traveled together at that point. We actually played, we were with Shadows Fall.
Mhm.
So it was Chimera, Shadows Fall, Times of Grace, and Machine Head. So we would do like
Oh,
side
nice.
stuff, and you'd always like travel on the same kind of bus or to and from the venues. But this one particular situation, all the bands had to fly from one place to the other. Like all the bands had finished early or whatever. So on my plane on our plane it was Machine Head, Meshuggah, Cold Chamber, Shadows Fall, System of a Down, Gojira, uh, Cold Chamber. Who else? Lamb of God. Basically every band that was on the opening, like Stained. I mean, the bands just keep going on. I don't know if Kitty was on that plane. Cherry Bombs. Slipknot wasn't on that plane. Limp Bizkit wasn't on that plane. Manson was sitting front row in first class. And there are other bands I'm forgetting. I mean, there's probably about 10 other bands, like all popular bands. Like Bush was on the plane. Maybe Soilwork. Black Dahlia Murder. Like if you look at I guess the stages, it was everyone that had kind of played early in the day. So as we take off, it is the most horrific rainstorm I've ever taken off in my entire life. Like the plane's like vibrating as we take off, and it's just horrific turbulence. I mean, maybe people don't remember that, but I specifically remember it because I was sober. As I thought that was going to be the day the music died part 2 because I thought the plane was going down. I'm like, this is it. Manson's riding fucking first class. This bitch is going down. All of the music of all of today is literally on this plane right now. Oh, man. Scary to put that many famous
Yeah.
people together at one time. You know what I mean? It really is.
Oh.
Because I guess it's funny. I never thought I'd be. My mom was like, I tell you, Sean, Marilyn Manson one day. And sure enough. First class.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you have any advice for aspiring vocalists, or maybe someone that that's wanting to pick up a mic, or someone that's had the mic for a while? Is there any tidbits of knowledge you can distill upon them and just motivate them or help them out?
Yeah,
Anyway?
I'd say don't give up. Finding your voice is important. Yes, it's really good to emulate musicians that you want to sound like because I think that helps find your voice.
Mhm.
But in the end, that's the most important thing is finding what you sound like.
Yeah.
And not to get discouraged if it hurts or if it feels weird or, it's not exactly the way it's supposed to sound. In time, it will sound exactly as you want it to sound. And if it does hurt, you may be doing it wrong. You may want to look into finding ways of doing that same style, but in a different method. Sometimes, even if you've been doing it for 10 years one way, like I know myself, I've had some kind of breakthroughs on death metal things, just about how I shape my mouth and the breaths that I take and not running out of air. again, sometimes reapproaching a style you've done for 10 years can help make it easier. Even if some like self-defeating thing, like, no, I'll always do it this way for the rest of my life. Sometimes there may be a better way. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Nice. All right. So this is your chance, if you will. I've took up a lot of your time. Just kind of plug, what do you have going on right now? I'm going to have links to your Instagram as well as your various bands' Instagram, Spotify links as well to check out.
Sweet.
Sean is a very, very busy man. There is stuff everywhere, so definitely go support the projects, help him out. And what do you have going on? What do you want to plug?
Obviously, Doth just released The Deceivers, Metal Blade, Sinsanum. Not sure of the title, not sure of the release date, but just look back on all the old Sinsanum stuff and just get ready for the new stuff. Also, some new Doth stuff is coming down the pipeline. Some covers of old songs and whatnot. Then we'll plug Vented. Vented is the other project I did. With my guitar player, Greg and Austin, who was in Chimera and Devil Driver at one point. And then my 80s, kind of 90s project, Velociter. That's kind of like my fun little project. And I'm not allowed to actually plug more than so many of them because Metal Blade only allowed me 5. I do have a kind of fun thrash project coming out. It's called And the Ugly, so be on the lookout for that. And then I have another project on the way out with Austin as well, but I can't reveal any names. So the things that you can actually plug and put links up for, that's Doth, Insanum, Vented, and Velociter.
Okay. All right. Speaking of Austin, fun story. He actually did an interview with another streamer over here on Kick last night. They
Sick.
chatted for a while.
Sick.
They're hanging out. So it was pretty cool. All the Vented and everything was over here. You guys were represented the last couple days on the platform and get interviewed.
Oh yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much, Sean. I've took up a lot of time.
Of course, man.
I know you're super busy, man. I really, really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me.
Yeah,
and
anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for chatting, and we'll talk soon, man.
All right, buddy.
All right, man. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
man.
Thank you all so much for watching or listening to this episode of Behind the Vocals featuring Sean Z of Doth. Huge shout out to Sean for giving us his time and coming on and chatting all things vocals and lyrics with us. Please be sure to check out his bands and projects down below in the description and go show them some love. And also check out tour dates and see when they're coming near a city near you. Thank you all so much for watching or listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.